Hi, this is Susan Blue Robot here from SusanBlueRobot.com. I'm here today with another card making video. This time I'm adding another program into the lesson that I'm doing. I'm going to be using the Scrap Factory by Scrappy Doo. So we'll get started. This is the card that I made and had on my blog this morning, and I said that if people wanted to know how I got the card base made for this, these little children, they're three-dimensionalized, but they're just sort of layered paper and gives them a bit of shaping. There's a little tiny trick to do down the bottom, and there's a little tiny trick to get the whole solid shape for using in PopUp Card Studio. So I won't be making this one exactly. I'll be going on to my next project, so you can work along with me. I'll be using PopUp Card Studio, as well as Make the Cut, as well as the Scrappy Doo's Scrap Factory, and it makes the body, the hair, and the outfit. And we'll get started. First off, when you launch it, you can pick your body. You can have the body with no toes. If it's going to have shoes and stuff, you don't really need the toes. Or if you're going to have little sandals and things, I've got a slight delay here, you can have the toes that you can add on if it wants to be bare feet or something. Well, I'm going to pick no toes. Okay, then I'll go on to the hairstyle, and I've decided to pick this hairstyle. You've got many of hairstyles to pick from, different hairstyles for either girls down here or the boys up here. There will be other ones added, I'm told, as other sets expansion packs come out. So I'm going to pick this one, and I'm going to pick an outfit. The girls' outfits are down here, and of course there'll be more as time goes on. And I want to pick this outfit here with the shoes, and I go generate SVG, and I save it. I'll save it as the little girl SVG, and I go save. But at this point I've already got it over there, so I don't want to overwrite it. And we go save. Now, then what we do is that it's now finished with. We now go to make the cut, and we bring in the SVG of the little girl we've just created. And this is what you have. Now that's all well and good. If you want to build the little paper doll in here, but I want to put it in a pop-up card. So what I need to do is I need to get a base of this. Now if I was to just take this one over to PopUp Card Studio, once I add the hair and pieces in, there'll be loose bits on my actual card. So this is what I did to get myself a base backing for my card. I did a copy of them, holding the Control Shift and doing a drag across. I've got a copy of them. I don't want these ones because they're just the toppers of the bodies, so I throw them away, and I throw these away. So what I have here is I have this. Now I'll zoom in here. What I'm going to do is use all these pieces. These are going to be the pieces that create the doll itself. So what I do is I then take the dress, put the dress in place, zoom in, zoom out, make sure you've got it in place where you're going to have it. Then I put my shoes in place, and this is how they're going to be in place once my doll is all cut out and made up, ready to put on the front or the inside, this case of my card. So I put the hair where it's going to be, in place. And also I need to take these bows because that will also add more out just down here where it overlaps. See where the bows extend out from the hair, plaits of the hair? I throw these bits away, I don't need them. Now if I go, okay, when I build my little doll, I'm not sure about that hair there. When I build my little doll to go on the inside of my pop-up card, that's how it's going to look. So now what I do is I select all of them and I do a weld. That now gives me the complete outline of the thing, so when these pieces are cut later, they will fit in place perfectly. So what I do now is I have these. First off, what I do before I start anything is I grab this one and I put that one on its own layer and I go lock, close, go to bottom, because that is just the building purposes. That's how it's built, to put together, to put on the doll. This is the complete outfit. That is just how the outfit goes together. This is more or less a plain one, but when it gets to like the sailors and stuff, you've got lots of bits and pieces. It's handy to have this one. So what I do now is I take this one. This one's my block out of how my construction is going to look when it's finished. So I do a copy of that. Oh no, I check the size. This is a height of turn these back on, and I check the size. This is a height of 5.125. That's way too big for my inside of my card unless I want to make a huge card. So I select all and I'm going to do globally shrink that down. So it's about so that's roughly about 4 inches. So that's about how I want it. So now that's my doll. I can close this. And I take this one. I do a copy of that. I take it over to... Okay, so we take it over to make the cut. And we'll have it on, say, a plane of 95. And I do paste in place. And here's my doll, the perfect size as to how I'm going to be building it in Make the Cut. So copying from PopUp Card Studio into Make the Cut and vice versa, if you paste in place, they'll be exactly the same size, so you know that it's going to be perfect every time. Bear in mind, when you bring it back this way, you use the paste in place, either under here, this paste in place, or this button here, or Control Shift V. If you just use Control V, it's only going to come in at this carrot size here, which my carrot is always 1 inch, and you don't want that. So we'll go back over here. And now, normally you would do a crop here. I don't want to do a crop here. And if you noticed, in my card here, I've got a few layers. I've got the backing layer, the shoes, and the shoes front sole. So that's going to add to the fold here. So I've got this just slightly up from the bottom of the card. And how I got that is I put her up a bit, zoom in so you can see what I'm doing, pan it around. I brought her up a bit. I did a 2-point rec auto quad, and I did it from the bottom of the card out here. Click there. Now, when I'm happy with that I know it's not going to be too big or too small. Let's go. We'll bring that in a bit. Okay, now I select all of that. I do a weld and I drop to the bottom plane. Right. So now what I do, get back to the panic mode because I was a bit too close in. And now at the top, yes, I do a little crop, but on a very low snapping. And I put her in there. And we hit the space bar, which takes us to the bottom plane, and that's on the top where it's very yellow here. And I do a 2-point rack at a snapping of 1/8 or higher. 1/8 or higher, if you haven't watched any of the videos yet, 1/8 or higher in the when you're doing the auto quad makes it a lot easier to get your dotted lines each way. And it goes, click there. So now here I have my little girl in a pop-up card. So I go back to this plane, and what I might do is go on a, say, 0.5, and I want to bring in a teardrop. And I bring in a teardrop over here, and I make that bigger. Take the snapping off so I can maneuver it around a bit better. Now I'm going to chop the top part of the teardrop here, and the bottom part to give it a flat bottom. And now I'm going to bring in a flower. I surfed the net and I found a nice silhouette flower and took it in to make the cut and did a pixel trace. And I put that in place. Now, one thing I did do is I also use the inverse eraser at, say, a bit more, and I just made this just ever so slightly. Well, I would make it ever so slightly fatter on the stems just for this project alone, because otherwise it'll be a bit flimsy. I'd zoom in and take my time, but you get the idea. Oh no, I don't want to do that. You get the idea that you just don't want your stems too small. Because you've got to think that this stem is what's going to be working your mechanism to hold your vase up. Okay, and once it's cut out, it doesn't look out of place being that small. Okay, so now we select those both, select, and we do a weld. So here's what we have, and we're going to give a anchor here and an anchor on the top of the flower here. So we hit the space bar and we pan around. We want a 2-point rec at 1/8 or higher. I always go for the 1/8, it's easy enough to do. And we go back, and I use the control shift and my mouse wheel, and it rolls down to the next one. And there we have. We just check that we've got our lines, score lines where they should be, and we have a little vase with a little girl. Now what's left to do is I go onto a plane of 0, and I'm going to put wording here, and I'm going to put the word thinking of you. And we're going to split them by glyph. You don't do a break, you do a split, so then the middles of the O's and the middles of the other letters, if there was any letters that were going to fall out, won't fall out. And we add that to the bottom of the card. So what we now have is a card ready to cut. And we do a virtual snapshot. Click on here. And so while that's doing a virtual snapshot, we'll show you what the print preview will be. And I still get to have a saying, please print preview at all times, so you don't get to the cut stage and then find that there's a solid line cut across here and it's got all the way through to when you're doing the cutting. So then what you'd do is you'd go export, render, export to SVG. Or in this case, because we know that the little girl is the same size as what we have in Make the Cut, you can cut straight to the machine. Cut out the base card and the card straight from the machine, and then just cut your little girl out from the Make the Cut. But in this case, I'm going to use SVG file. So I save that as an SVG file. And this is what it would look like, the rendering. And that's what my card's going to look like, and it's going to have the paper pieced doll here. So we'll go on over now to Make the Cut, and I bring in, I know what I'm going to cut here. I'm going to cut these ones out of the flesh colour, this out of the hair colour, and so on, this out of the colour, and whatever colour you want to choose. And the eyes and things is just normal paper piecing pieces. I'm going to bring in another page. I'm going to call that my card. And I'm going to bring in the SVG file. And the SVG file I want is where you saved it. And here we have our card that we just made. Well, I put 2 flowers in this one, but the other one, I like it. I like it better with the one. I might go back and save that shortly. So now what you do is you just go ahead and you either put to each its own and cut how you normally would. Now, there was another question, is none of my videos spoke about, I don't use registration marks when I'm doing the pop-ups unless it is print and cut. What I do, even though my registration marks are here, but I'm not printing, so I'm not using them. What I do now is I turn this one off. Here is my score lines. What I do is, because I use the score tool, I would click on this, wind this up to 160. I wind this up to 3. This is just the way I do it. I have it on. What you see is what you get. Then I click the blade origin, and I click it over until it's where I want it on the map, the laser on the map, which is just here. And then I go finish. Then I cut project. After I've cut project, I turn these off and I turn this on. Now I just have the cut lines here. I click on here. I haven't taken it out of the machine. I take this back to my normal cutting number, depending on your paper and your preferences. I take this back to 1. Then I still leave it on what says what you get, and I go here. I go use last. Then I go finish. Then I go cut project. so it'll be working in exactly the same spot as your last one. And then you have your cut project. And so from that, then you go and you cut your pieces out. Now, what I tended to do is I cut this little girl out in the colour of my card base. Then I built, when I've cut this out, I've built her around. First off, I put the hair behind her head and put the pieces in place, and I built it up, gluing it as I went. And I put the doll in place, and so on and so on and so forth, lining it up, making the doll to exactly that outer black plain one that I've cut the same colour as my actual pop-up card. That way you know this is going to fit perfectly on here when it's done. Then you have your card. So, and so that's all there is to how I did manage to get this piece from scrap factory in to make the cap, and I made this. Then I used this to take it over to PopUp Card Studio and generated a pop-up, and then back to make the cut to cut it all. So I hope this has helped. This has been Susan Blue Robot at susanbluerobot.com. If you'd like to purchase any of these 3 programs, the Scrap Factory, the Make the Cut, or the Make the Cuts PopUp Card Studio, if you follow a link from my blog, it will help support my blog. Thank you for visiting, and I hope you enjoyed this. Bye for now.